Just use code ACHIEVER at monarch.com and get your first year of Monarch Core at half off, just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with the code ACHIEVER. With Shopify, nothing stands between your idea and a real business. So go make it one. Just go to shopify.com/anxiousachiever and start your free trial today and hear more sales go. Live shopping is so much fun, and that's why I love Whatnot, the largest dedicated live shopping platform. Just search Whatnot, that's WHATNOT, in the App Store. Download it, and you can start selling right away. Go to Amazon or physicianschoice.com and use the code PCPodcast10 for 10% off your entire order. You can also find Physician's Choice at all your favorite retailers. If you need a specialized freelancer, try Upwork. Just visit upwork.com right now. Post your job for free. That's upwork.com and connect with top talent ready to help your business grow. Hi, I'm Maura Aarons-Mele, host of The Anxious Achiever. Today, I'm going to bring you one of our most downloaded and one of my most favorite episodes from our archives. It's a classic. The Anxious Achiever has been at it for a long time. We have over 300 episodes. And honestly, they're all still more relevant than ever. You may hear details in this episode that remind you it's from another time, but I guarantee that the advice you get will be as crisp and meaningful and the stories as resonant as before. If you have a favorite episode of the show, let me know. I'd love to air it again or even re-record it for you fresh. Enjoy this classic Anxious Achiever episode. A lot of the conversations I have in my own life and the conversations I have on the show aren't easy because talking about mental health involves diving into a whole lot of stigma, guilt, shame, frustration, vulnerability. It comes from the person experiencing the issue and those around them, whether they're family, friends, or colleagues. Well, today's guest is someone who loves these kinds of conversations. And I was excited to grill her a bit as well, to learn about her sources of shame, vulnerability, and taboo. Aarons-Mele is the host of the podcast Death, Sex, and Money, a role she's had for years after being a political reporter in public radio. Throughout the life of the show, she's also had children, moved across the country, gone through many ups and downs, and written a recent book. Here's my conversation with the wonderful Aarons-Mele about life, work, and taboo. The first thing I just wanted to ask is, have you always liked talking about things that other people don't? Like, where does this come from?
You know, people have asked me that, and I'm like, it's made me feel like I'm an alien. I'm like, am I like, how out of the ordinary am I? I don't think of my personality as one that's like particularly drawn to tough things or hard things. But what I do really get fed by is that feeling when you like really lock into a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
So, I think that often when that's happening, it's because between you and another person, something is being shared that is a little out of the ordinary, that's a little bit more deep. And I love that. That is like what I live for.
Yeah. I mean, I only ask I didn't want to make you feel defensive. I think it's amazing. I am the same way. And, I don't really do small talk. I'm extremely introverted and extremely socially anxious. But I do find that people end up telling me things that they don't tell other people because I used to think it was because I was on the internet for so many years and I was a blogger, but like, I don't have filters that other people do in a way. Like, I'll just ask people things because I really want to know and I want to connect and I love hearing people's stories. And I listen to your show and I think, oh my gosh, I wonder what Anna's like at a cocktail party.
I'm like the same way. It's
Are you?
Yeah. I'm like in the corner with someone who I've like had an interesting exchange with, and then we just keep digging in together. Yeah.
Have you ever gotten the feedback? So I did get the feedback once that it was a lot. Someone was like, sometimes it's just a lot. Okay. Like sometimes we just want to talk about like reality TV. And I was like, okay, I get that.
um, have I get the feedback of like, it's most often comes from my husband, and it's like, and his feedback is when we're hosting, it's like, Anna, I need you to not like go into that tunnel of focus that you go into
Mhm.
because I need your help, like making sure people's wine
'Cause the
glasses are
chicken's
filled up.
burning. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm like, oh yeah. But to me, like the reason you have people over is to have that kind of conversation.
Do you consider yourself s particularly introverted or extroverted?
I think when I was growing up, I thought of myself as an introvert, probably because when with my family, which is a pretty big family, I'm not one of the lead talkers. But I think as an adult now and noticing the way move through public spaces or, random conferences where you have to walk up and talk to people, I feel pretty comfortable doing that now. I think probably because being a reporter has made me strengthen that muscle.
Right, I guess if you can embed with troops in Afghanistan and ask them questions, you can handle a run-of-the-mill meetup, right?
I don't know. I think yeah, I feel more anxious when I'm not working because then you don't have this sort of excuse to say I'm coming up to ask you these questions for my job. Instead it's like, "Hey, what brings you here?"
Right, which I feel like is our basic human need to be liked.
Yeah. I think so, or just not feel awkward, feel at ease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a show about work.
Mhm.
I want to just like start out by asking you, what taboos do you think still exist in the workplace when it comes to our conversations? So much has changed in the past year. I feel like we're in the past decade, it's Pride Month right now. And, every corporation is draped in a rainbow flag, and things have really changed in terms of taboo.
Mhm.
And yet there must be things that are extremely taboo to talk about at work still. What are some of those?
I mean, I think about this a lot because I think certainly it very much depends on the context of your particular workplace. I
Mhm.
think about with my team, which is primarily women. Some of us are parents. Like we just, especially in the last year, but even before then, when we were cycling on and off parental leave as some of us got pregnant, I really appreciate on my team and in my work environment that it's not taboo to talk about the other pressures and things we have to deal with as parents and as people who live in homes and have obligations outside of our work. And I think that that's really encouraging just for a lot of workplaces, the idea of like being able to time shift to do work when you can get it done,
Mm.
which I think the pandemic forced for a lot of workers who weren't able to keep going into the office. So that's one thing that made me think about. Another thing that's taboo, I think, is, I do think like, certainly there's companies that have gone through, taken the approach of extreme salary transparency, whether it's like a, startup tech company or, my husband works for a public institution and you've long been able to look
Mhm.
up salaries of people who work for state government. But I do think outside of those contexts, figuring out how to talk about compensation and asking for raises and, um, I notice in my own workplace, like people have a lot of different styles that are so just interesting to observe based on how they grew up around money, how they feel about money, how they feel about like whether it's honorable or a little like gross to be really aggressive about asking for raises. I think that's just really interesting to observe and to talk about with my coworkers and colleagues.
I agree. I do think that money is something that makes us extremely anxious. And yet it's not supposed to be taboo to talk about at work because we're all there to earn a living.
Right.
It's a weird combination.
Right.
It's like we have to talk about money, but we don't really want to. So let's get into money for a little bit, if you don't
Sure.
mind. I have to start with a moment that you had recently. You replayed it on your show, Death, Sex, and Money, where you spoke with Sally Krawcheck,
Mhm.
who is a famous Wall Street. She was an analyst. She got famously fired. She has become sort of a financial feminist, right? She speaks a lot. She's very public. And you and she had such an interesting, really uncomfortable exchange. And I thought, oh my God, if Sally Krawcheck, whose whole mission is like women need to earn more money, it gets bristly talking about this stuff, what hope is there for the rest of us? Because I think that there's a lot of shame for people around money, whether they either feel they earn not enough, too much, or they don't deserve it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the role of shame that you see?
Well, I love that moment on the show because you can hear her get really agitated and irritated and pissed off at me. like
You
like
can't,
really.
and she is a smooth cookie.
Yeah.
I mean, I have seen her speak many times and I've interviewed her. Like, she is polished. She's got that thing going on and she just like, whoa.
Yeah, she got mad. And I think it was so interesting to me about it, like, I think she's such an interesting, talk about somebody who, like, she was not surrounded by women who were getting to the highest ranks of the banking industry when she was coming up. So I have a lot of admiration for how she has built her career. And the moment where she got uncomfortable was I was asking her about the context of being a woman who has made a lot of money, talking to a broader audience of women about how to manage their money. And I asked about just like if that ever feels uncomfortable, knowing that you have a lot and then you are this cheerleader for people in your audience who probably mostly have less than you do. And I think where she bristled was I think she heard me asking, like, how dare you? And also, you should feel ashamed that you have more than the people you're talking to. Because she went on to say, don't you know I've lost a lot of money as well as earned a lot of money, and here's how hard I worked. And so I think that what that revealed was, she has some ambivalence about having earned a lot of money, and to have it pointed out directly felt shaming. And I certainly didn't have that intention. Like, I think it's expected that if you have a successful career in banking that you're going to earn more money than most people who work in the American economy. But I think that's why it became uncomfortable, because it triggered that sense of shame. And I think it was interesting to hear that, because so often we think of money and shame as coming from the other direction, which is like, I'm trying to, pretend that I have more than I have, or I have, this secret debt that people don't know about, and hopefully they never find out because I have, a house with a 2-car garage, and hopefully no one ever finds out how much student debt I have, that kind of thing. But I think you can feel shame from so many angles, whether you have more than you need or less than you need.
It was surprising to me how readily available the shame was for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, this woman who is wealthy and who stands for women actually making a lot of money and talking about it is conflicted about what her money means for her. So what does money mean for you?
I knew you were going to do that.
I'll do that.
I am also conflicted, let me tell you. Money, I feel like my money personality is, if I'm going to have anxiety about anything, it's most often going to show up first around finances. And that's, everything from like in the middle of the night going to sleep in Berkeley and thinking about, oh my gosh, if there's an earthquake in the middle of the night and our house falls down, like how quickly would we have to declare personal bankruptcy? Like that kind of worry. Or, oh my gosh, like what is it going to be like when I have to pay for childcare for 2 kids and not just one? That's where I go. And at the same time, even as I'm like, that worry, the thing that, like helps soothe that anxiety is when I remind myself, like, Anna, you've done some planning, you've got savings, you know that it's going to be expensive to have childcare, and then you're going to have a kid in public school. Like I have to talk myself down, but then I have a whole other set of feelings about like, who do I think I am to be earning as much money as I have as a podcast host, and that's very rooted in growing up in West Virginia, where, there's just this feeling of like, what do you do for work? And you're making how much money? Because I
Is that a real job? I get
yeah,
that too.
yeah. And I think it's also really interesting in media because I started out in local newsrooms, in West Virginia, where like you do not go into newspaper reporting or public radio reporting to be an earner in your household. And
Mhm, mhm.
media can begin to look different when you move into places like New York City or Washington or the Bay Area. So I feel I have to I have all those sets of feelings around success and whether I should give all my money away because other people need it, those questions.
Right. Or you're gonna end up, on the street because of the earthquake.
Right. So it's both. I tell myself you need to hoard every single cent that you make so you can be safe, and also you should be giving your money away to be honorable, which is quite a mix to be carrying around.
100%. Does the voice sound like anyone that's in your head? Your money anxiety voice?
I love that question because I talked to my therapist about this, and it's really good. I'd never done this before. I met this therapist, and she was like, "Let's just like spend some time with that voice. Like, what's she sound like, and what does she say?" And I think she's really. I picture her like having like a holding like a ruler in her hand and like slapping it on the the palm of her hand, like really being
Oh, she's
yeah, she's
mean.
mean and she's strict and she really believes there's a right and wrong way, which like something that has I have needed to remind myself that has given me great comfort is like there's not one right way to do your money, and the things that the beliefs that are based on that are very culturally specific and very class specific and very like, there's a lot of ways I am helped by learning from other people about how they think about money and how they think about sharing and how they think about where they are in their lives and the risks that they take when. That's been comforting to me.
My oldest child is graduating from high school a year from now, and I really wanna go on a family trip. I find family trips are just so precious. The kids will never forget it, and they're expensive. And so I am planning with Monarch. Monarch is the personal finance app that tracks everything: accounts, investments, saving goals, and spending. You can get your first year of Monarch Core for half off. That's just 50 bucks with the promo code Achiever. Monarch's personal finance app monitors your money, but the thing that I love most about it is that it helps you plan ahead. Most apps only tell you what you've already spent, but Monarch helps set goals, map out big purchases, and you can see if you're on track before it's too late to adjust. You don't have to look back and be like, oh my God, I really, really overspent 2 months ago, right? There are AI insights that help you spot things you wouldn't even think to look for. And you can get a heads up on what's happening with your money with the AI weekly recap. It flags spending spikes, net worth shifts. Those are usually nice, maybe not in the stock market, and upcoming expenses. Just use code Achiever at monarch.com and get your first year of Monarch Core at half off, just 50 bucks. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with the code Achiever. You actually opened my eyes in your book. I'm going to blank on the name of the writer and psychologist who coined the four different
Oh, Brad
money
Klontz. Yeah.
styles. Yes. Okay. So Brad Klontz, I can't believe I missed this in all my obsessive researching about money and emotions. But you spoke about four different personalities, and the one that went ding ding for me was being vigilant, like sort of hyper vigilant around your money, knowing where every dollar is and sort of like, did I get that earthquake insurance plan? And if not, I better write it down right now and call them at 8 a.m. Like, is that
Oh,
you or
yes.
which
We
one are
share
you?
that.
Yeah. It's so fun. So fun.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's such an illusion based on that is like, anxious achiever. Most anxious achievers are probably money vigilant, I would say, because it fits in with this life paradigm, which is like, if I worry about this enough, that means I'm being responsible, which means I'm going to be safe.
I can absolutely worry it
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
Defensive pessimism.
Yes, exactly.
Is that how you roll? If you just sort of plan enough?
Well, that's my natural state of being if I weren't helped by other people. I have really like this is a way I hope I'm continuing to grow in my marriage to my husband Arthur, because what he will say to the defensive, pessimistic part of me is like, Anna, like, why are you taking all the fun out of this? You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that is a consequence of really digging into this particular worldview is like you you don't make a lot of space for joy, you know, and for celebrating possibility because instead you're coming up with contingency plans, you know?
So I want to ask a little bit about negotiating. Um, you do a lot of different projects, and I would imagine that you have to negotiate, with various entities who are paying you for various pieces of your work, right? Whether it's a book or content or speaking. I'm curious what kind of a negotiator you consider yourself, and what you've learned about negotiating now that you know how money sort of can trigger you.
Oh, that's good. I mean, I think of money coming up in my life in two really specific ways. I have worked for companies for all of my journalism career, so it's like negotiating in the context of these long employment relationships um,
Mhm.
is one set of negotiations, and that's can be tricky because if you know that you are going to have a relationship after you figure out what the money arrangement is going to be, you are managing, oh, I hope they think that I'm still cool after I ask for all that I want.
Right.
And then there's the other context of like sort of the one-off thing. And let me do the one-off first. Like I will say, if you are someone who it's part of your job to reach out to people to ask for them to come to an event you're throwing or to do some sort of service for you, I so appreciate, and it happens so rarely that I find it shocking. I so appreciate when in that first initial ask, when there is
Mhm.
some acknowledgement of compensation being involved or not. Um,
Yes.
and whether it's, even if it's like a small nonprofit to just say like, we know your time is valuable and we can't, so it would be, we can offer you a modest honorary and blah, 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 and then go on because it just gives the person who's receiving the ask like a way in and not because otherwise I will tell you when I get that email that's like, hey, we would love to have you come do this thing. The event is here and here and here. Please let us know and we can tell you more. Like, why are you putting me in the position of having to gather the emotional energy of saying, like, hi, I have two kids, so I don't travel unless it's paid. Let's talk about it.
Yep.
Like, it's like we all know that these are transactions, and and it doesn't always have to be a super, it's financial transaction, but there's a transaction of energy, a transaction of labor. Like, so let's acknowledge it. And I have found one secret that I have now used, as I just said, is like being a parent really helps you be really direct about what you will and won't do because you can be really clear about the value of your time and especially if it involves travel and blame it on your children.
Oh, but okay, but let me push you. If you were a corporate lawyer, would you do that?
If I were a corporate lawyer,
Because you have a little bit of, you're your own brand,
I
I
guess,
guess. Like,
well,
what's
you
your
know what?
general?
I think of that in terms of like if it's something that's beyond what my work is, like if you're asking me to do
Mhm.
something that's like
Extracurricular, right?
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
exactly. So if I were a corporate lawyer and I was negotiating a billable hour situation, and I probably wouldn't blame my children that I need to pay for college, so you need to pay me $1,000 an hour instead of 500.
Well,
Maybe.
fine. But if the Women's Bar Association said, "Can you come to California and give a talk?"
Yeah,
Then you might say, "Yeah, yeah, you know what? I can, but here's my rate to leave the state and fly 5 hours or whatever
yeah. I mean, I
because I
think
have
that
kids."
that's. I don't know. Corporate lawyers who are listening, I understand that different work industries have very different cultures around what's acceptable for people to acknowledge as far as family commitments. But I think that's totally reasonable, especially if like you're going to have to be gone overnight and you're going to have to pay for a babysitter or, that sort of thing. Like, so that's one way. I mean, the other thing that I have found I really love, uh, I and I should have done this earlier, is like, as soon as you start getting requests for doing things that are above and beyond what your regular work duties are, it's really helpful to just ask somebody to help you, deal with
Mm,
requests so that they can be the person
mhm.
who's like, here's how this works, here's what the budget will be. I find that really helpful because it does take so much emotional energy to be like, what are the words I'm going to choose for this email, so that they understand that I'm grateful that they reached out and thought of me, but also et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. um, but I had a friend, a colleague who's a much more successful journalist than me. He told me he got really good advice at one point, which was like, I know that feeling you have when somebody emails you and asks you to do something that sounds exciting in the moment and you're excited they thought of you. He's like, a really good test is to like quickly move to the question, if this were tomorrow night, would I be excited to do this? Or would I feel exhausted by the prospect? And
Ooh.
like framing for me, because then it's like, oh, if I'm really exhausted by the prospect, then I'm going to say, okay, I'm interested in this, but here's how much you have to pay me. So at least I'm going to get some money out of it.
I think that is great. I think that's great advice for anybody, right? Who gets excited and flattered in the moment, as we all do, right? And but may not be realistic about their boundaries. So I want to close out by asking you to give some advice to some of our listeners who might be just starting out in their careers. I've been getting questions recently from younger anxious achievers, and let's start with the lens of money. What do you wish you had known about your money story and how it would affect what you ask for at work when you were starting out? And what advice could you give to people?
I think part of being an anxious achiever for me, meant that it took a lot of work to learn to think about what my wildest dreams could be, or to like give myself space for that. Um, I think the way that I thought about money is always very, like, okay, here was my salary when I'm 24, and maybe I'll get a 3% raise, 25, 26. So then I'll be earning this when I'm 30. Like this idea that somehow you can like really project forward really far. Like,
Mm,
um, I find that that's not really how money works because, in a field like mine, like podcasting wasn't a career path when I was starting out in radio. So I had no possibility. Like impossible to think about what I would be doing when I was 40, when I was starting in radio at 24. Um, I do feel really proud of my 23 and 24-year-old self that like starting from the very first job offers that I got, I would always ask for, a couple $1,000s more than they initially offered. And
that's great.
got it.
Huh.
And I remember like, like when you're first in the workforce and you realize like, shoot, like my moment of leverage was right before I said yes. And now I have zero leverage.
And I'm stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like really thinking about that leverage idea is an important one for thinking about
Mm,
your money life. And I think that can sound like mercenary and weird, but like the fact is like we all work in markets. So the leverage you have is like can be about like reminding your employer what value you're bringing to the company. It can be making sure that you are staying connected, with people who work in your field who don't work for your company, just so you're aware of how things are changing and what the market, is looking like. Um, but I think that's really important. And then when you have that conversation where you do have leverage, like there's a way. I've been kind of like I've had some really positive experiences where I'm talking about, uh, you know, here's what this could look like with a boss, and like, and when you can find a way to have an honest exchange about like, here's what I'm thinking about what I'd like and what my financial and creative needs are over the next 3 years. Like, tell me about what your vision is for my unit or my, you know, how you'd like the company to grow and can those two work together? You can have really collaborative conversations in the context of a negotiation that feel actually like fun because you're building something together. It doesn't have to have that sort of like gross adversarial feel all the time.
Sometimes you're in the mood, for some jewelry, for a treat, but you don't want to spend a fortune. And I love to talk about jewelry. I love to look at jewelry. And that's why I love Whatnot. I was on Whatnot last night, just going through really fun, chic, don't break the bank jewelry sales. Whatnot is the largest dedicated live shopping platform, whether it's beauty, collectibles, electronics, luxury fashion, even cookies. And sellers are building real, thriving businesses. And anybody can sell on Whatnot, whether you have a big business, a small one, or a budding business. People selling on Whatnot sell 10 times more than on other major marketplaces. Because on Whatnot, you're not just listing products, you're building real connections with buyers. And so Whatnot buyers spend more than an hour a day in the app because we're not just browsing, we're engaged, buying, and coming back. Search Whatnot. That's WHATNOT in the App Store. You can download it and you can start selling right away. That's Whatnot in the App Store. Download it, and you can start selling, engaging with customers, and selling more. If you've been sitting on a business idea, Shopify makes it easy to make it happen. There's everything you need to start selling. It's included and ready from day one. So it's planting season. I'm a big gardener. I have been buying a lot of seeds. I buy seeds from this wonderful website called Renee's Garden. And Renee's Garden uses Shopify. I use the Shop Pay app, I check out, and then when I want to come back very soon, which I always do because I forgot a kind of seed, it's easy for me to check out with my information securely saved. I like to think about how do you start an heirloom seed company? It's so beautiful. And clearly, it works with Shopify's help. Shopify powers millions of businesses worldwide, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to small businesses, and my favorite, Renee's Garden. With Shopify, nothing stands between your idea and a real business. So go make it one. Just go to shopify.com/anxious achiever and start your free trial today. That's shopify.com/anxious achiever. Me and a lot of my friends were in perimenopause and we feel bloated and sluggish and constipated often, right? And I thought all that was normal until I started taking a probiotic, right? And I love Physician's Choice. Better health really does start in the gut. And that's why I'm going to tell you about Physician's Choice 60 billion probiotic. It's the simplest thing I can do. It's one capsule a day. What I love, it's not just one strain of probiotic, it's 10 different strains, all in one simple daily capsule, and it survives stomach acid, getting where it needs to go. Listen, you don't have to be in perimenopause to want better digestive health. You'll feel better, you'll have more energy. And Physician's Choice is the #1 best-selling probiotic on Amazon for a reason. It has more than 140,000 reviews, so don't just take my word for it. It supports gut, immune, and digestive health to feel less bloated, less gassy, more regular, and lighter. It's developed with a team of doctors. It's the Physician's Choice. And it's made in the USA with a no-question 60-day money-back guarantee. Go to Amazon or physicianschoice.com and use the code PCPodcast10 for 10% off your entire order. That's PCPodcast10 for 10% off. You'll see the best results after a month or so. So invest in your gut, subscribe, and save for up to 40% off your order. So my last question, I want to zoom out and go back a little bit to where we began with taboo topics at work. One of the questions that is an evergreen question from listeners is, I'm really struggling. Do I tell my boss?
I think that's a really good question. Okay. And I think it's like, unfortunately, there's not one answer.
Right.
Because it depends on the boss, it depends on the context, it depends on your level of flexibility in your particular workplace. Um, and, I find it's like, I think it's helpful to have a lot of conversations with maybe people you trust, like, whether it's a partner or a friend or a family member, and then maybe a colleague or a coworker, before you have that conversation with your boss. Um, because I do think that it's what I really love um, in talking to people who I find really interesting when I'm talking to people who are more early career is like, it's really fun to brainstorm with them about like where they're feeling itchy, you know? And so if it can be in that context of like, you sort of have those early conversations with people who aren't your boss so you can figure out what's agitation and irritation and burnout and what actually is like the places where I am hungry to grow, you know?
Mhm.
And then when you have
Mhm.
the conversation with the boss, you can say something like, I'm noticing like, I kind of feel like I would like to try doing something in this way instead of this way. Like, and I've thought about like, you can sort of like bring it where it's like, what do you think about this idea? Because I think often, and I do this with our managers and employers and bosses, it's very easy to replicate a parental relationship where you're just
Oh
like,
God, yes.
I hate my life. Please fix it. Or like, stop telling me what to do. Um, and like, if you're a boss, you're like, okay, what should I do with this information? And I get it because that's like, I do that. But like, think about it from the manager's point of view, which is like, what is the thing that I can do that is going to be a next
Right.
step after this conversation? So if you come to that conversation with your boss, with even if it's like a harebrained idea that you never think they'll say yes to. Like, I work in journalism, so I think in like story pitches. Like,
Mhm.
when I first got together with my husband, who's like, he just has like a more, I don't know, he's just a little bit more open at brainstorming. I'm like such a rule follower and like, I think so. I can be really small in the way I think because I immediately think in logistics. And he'll be
Hmm.
like, well, what's your objective here? You want to do more of this? Like, let's talk about it.
Mhm.
So I was really helped, like, when we first got together, where he was like, okay, sounds like you're like burned out by going into the newsroom every day. Like, what if you think about a story series where you would have to do a road trip and interview these types of people? And I was like, can I ask for that? And he's like, well, how much would it cost? And I'm like, it would be super cheap because I would stay at like really cheap hotels and like it would be, like I could pitch
Yeah.
something that's like a $2,000 budget for me to get to be on the road for 2 weeks talking to voters. And then they said yes. And I was like, what? you know, like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I never would have given myself permission to fathom that kind of pitch.
Mm.
And then if that's, say you pitch something to your boss and they say, sorry, that's not a possibility. We need you to do these certain things. Then you have an answer about their ability to like help you grow. And like, you want to be in a position where you're going to grow, or you want to start thinking about where else could I grow?
And if the question you have is, I'm in a bad place emotionally. I'm in a mental health crisis, and you're scared to tell them. What's your advice there?
I mean, that's a really interesting question about taboo because
Mhm.
at once the culture is changing in really positive ways where there's a much deeper understanding about how mental health is health. And just like you need to get surgery when your body needs surgery, sometimes you need help to take care of your mental health. At the same time, I think it also is tricky because you have to figure out if your boss is someone who is going to deliver a penalty for this down the line somehow. I hate to say that, but I think that's probably something to be aware of. And if you do realize, like, oh, I don't think I can tell my boss that I'm struggling in these ways, again, it tells you something about the work environment that you're working in, about
Mhm.
whether your whole self is welcome. And,
Mhm.
but I do think I don't know. I think it's about like, if you're struggling with your mental health, I think it's about, again, talking to people in your life, talking to medical professionals, like looking at what kind of resources and help your company does offer, if they offer any. Like I know my company offers certain number of employee assistance, calls.
Mhm.
Like kind of look at the toolbox of resources that are available to you, and then if it still feels like I need something beyond taking time off and taking care of myself away from work, but I need my work to know that I need medical leave, then you have to take that step. Like I was talking to a friend recently who had a real mental health crisis a few months ago, and she was struggling with the decision of whether to leave this job that she really loved but wasn't paying her enough.
Mm.
And she was like, "Yeah, but I might go into credit card debt if I leave this job and or if I stay at this job because of how." And I was like, "Well, let's just remember, like, you need to take care of yourself. And if this is making you feel happy, like, it won't matter if you have credit card debt if you're in a really dangerous place, Like, so let's prioritize things. Like credit card debt is not the worst thing.
Mhm.
So I think we all need to take seriously, especially now when there's just been so many stresses in our culture and in each of our lives individually. Like you have to take care of your safety first and foremost, because money doesn't matter if you are not safe.
Well, Anna, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your work.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your work.
That's it for this week's show. If you like the show, follow us and tell your friends. And please leave us a review. It really helps the anxious achiever get found by people just waiting for our content. I'm your host, Maura Aarons-Mele. Lots more to come in the next episode.